And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, The John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, we're just a few weeks away from the special election in Oakland to replace Mayor Sheng Tao. There was a forum last week that included the candidates you know of, like Barbara Lee and Lauren Taylor, and maybe even Rania Webb, the woman who finked on Sheng Tao. But as you know, recall special elections bring out the gadflies. Here's one of the candidates for mayor, Eric Simpson. Introduce yourself.
Next, we'll hear from Eric Simpson.
Hello. I'm a lifelong member of the Socialist Workers' Party.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, if Eric Simpson is a lifelong member of the Socialist Workers' Party, I think I'd rather vote for O.J. Simpson.
What's going on, America?
How's hell?
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former assistant U.S. attorney and counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division in the first Trump administration. Paul Moore, welcome.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet.
Let's start out by talking about last night's speech before a joint session of Congress where President Trump outlined his agenda for the first year of his second term. What did you make of the president last night?
Well, I mean, a heck of a speech, 99 minutes, I think. So finally someone beat Bill Clinton's record, and people were still eating it up while the president was going on. It was a great speech. And, but honestly, the show that was so concerning was all the Democrats, their response, sitting on their hands, Representative Green shaking his cane and having to be thrown out of the assemblage. I mean, just disgusting. The things, the refusing to clap for a young cancer victim that's got a death sentence hanging over his head. All the sensible things that Democrats ought to at least find within them some humanity to stand up and say, yeah, he's right about that. We can't stand the guy, but boy, we're going to clap for this. They couldn't even do that. These people have lost their minds. And so, it's a wonderful opportunity for the president to show that he's actually where most of the American people are on issue after issue, and he did it very effectively.
I'll tell you, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't. After watching what happened last night, I came away with the feeling that the Democratic Party is not going to get their way in the next primary for president, that the machine candidate, the candidate that the Democratic establishment wants, is unlikely to win because their base right now is demanding their own disruptor, a disruptor coming from the left. Because before last night's speech, Hakeem Jeffries, who is the new Democratic leader, the minority leader in the House, sat them all down and explicitly told them he did not want what happened last night to happen. He didn't want anyone heckling. He didn't want anyone kicked out. He didn't want any signs of obvious protest. He wanted them to sit there, watch the speech, and then afterwards try to poke holes in the arguments of the president and try to win the debate. They all pretty much universally ignored him and did their own thing without fear of consequence. When the troops are not behaving the way that the coach wants them to behave or the general wants them to behave in this particular case, it shows you that they believe that their constituents are demanding that they behave like that they will be rewarded if they get kicked out of a joint session of Congress or if they end up on cable news because they created some kind of disruption during the speech or they left before the speech was over. I think this is foreshadowing a Democratic primary where they lose control over who their nominee is.
Well, it sure seems that way. And I mean, you have to look last night if Nancy, brass knuckles Pelosi had really been in charge, how would the Democrats have responded? I don't know. But I mean, Hakeem Jeffries must have said, well, we spent all this money on these little signs that are awfully nifty. We've got a, choreographed plan to hold them up at the right times, synchronized together, gee whiz, let's stay on that great plan. And it was just vapid. It was like listening to Kamala Harris try to answer questions. There was nothing there. And I mean, while these opportunities when they've got the attention of the American people to behave that way as just disruptors. And I mean, they show no signs of having learned anything from the last election. And the other thing too, this reminds me, if they want their own Donald Trump, it's kind of like a few years ago when they wanted their own Rush Limbaugh. Good luck. They're not cultivating grounds where you're going to create someone who's independent and determined and has common sense like that. They've been salting their fertile lands for a long time, so they can only come up with these homegrown wackos. And I don't know how they're going to end up with anything different. I mean, is Tim Walz the only guy? I mean, the Democrats are going to yearn for someone like Joe Biden again.
If Nancy Pelosi were still in charge, do you think they would have done that last night, or would they have been afraid of her?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're the expert on Nancy, right? It's I just think that it seemed kind of feckless what they were doing, and surely she would have had enough sense to say, look, set your little signs down and clap when we're talking about the young boy with cancer, things like that. Because they had to have known that these human interest stories were going to come up. They knew who was going to be who would be the president's guest, and to not have, I mean, how much are they in their own echo chamber for the Dems and their consultants not to say, hey, folks, maybe this isn't a good approach. It really didn't work so well in the last election, and that's why we're looking at Donald Trump again. I don't know. Surely Nancy Pelosi would have had some slightly improved approach, but I don't know.
And they should also recognize they're not going to be running against Donald Trump again. They're going to be running against someone else with a different personality, with a different way of expressing themselves, with a different maybe set of ideas as to where to take the country, whether it's J.D. Vance or someone else. If you are an army that is prepared to fight the last battle, you're not fighting the battle that's in front of you on that particular day, and you might end up losing again.
That's very true, but I mean, they've spent years chasing away any moderates in the party. I mean, to the extent that they had some moderates, they've become Republicans, or they've left office and been replaced by some wackos. And so, I mean, this is not a party that rewards centrist. There's no room for Bill Clinton in this party, except as a spectator and fundraiser. And it's just I don't know through the way districts are drawn, you've got all sorts of wacko congressmen who show up and support wacko things, and I think that they don't know that there's any other American. They see the American people as being very different than they are, and they haven't taken a clue from the last election. They just don't get it. You'd think sitting there they would understand it, but they don't seem to.
We're speaking with Paul Moore, the former Assistant U.S. Attorney and Counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division in the first Trump administration. Paul also is the author of a piece that's out right now in The Hill, which you can get online at thehill.com. The title is "The U.S. Must Protect Vital Information from Enemies Like China." Paul, you have spent a lot of time researching the Chinese government, the communist Chinese government, writing about the communist Chinese government. You believe that when we share information with them, they weaponize that information and use it against us. You've written about this most recently in The Hill. What did you find? What do you find that they're doing with our information?
Well, I mean, they actually have one of their agencies in their federal government is national government is devoted to completely taking civilian use technologies and applying them to the Chinese military, to the development of the People's Liberation Army, and so we go along blindly as an open society, and we like to pretend that no one's going to misuse the technology that we give them a front row seat to. But basically, the Chinese for a long time they provide gifts and contracts with our major research universities, including some in California, Caltech, UCLA, some others. And the Chinese researchers generally have a front seat to the development of our innovations, research innovations. They're under, no matter how much we might like those individual researchers or how talented they may be, they actually have to go back, they have to report what they have learned, what they've recorded. They have to give it to the CCP-controlled agency that then hands it to the PLA and says, how can you use this? Go put it to work. And so this isn't just conjecture. The House Select Committee on the CCP actually in December issued a report called CCP on the Quad, and it covered a lot of issues, but this is one of them. And they actually found that our Department of Defense had funded more than 2,000 scientific research papers with Chinese scientists directly affiliated with China's defense and industrial base. And here's what they were working on. Emerging technologies, including hypersonic and fourth generation nuclear weapons, AI, advanced lasers, high performance explosives, rocket fuels, and robotics. So you heard me right. Our Department of Defense was funding these bilateral and multilateral collaborations with Chinese researchers who are then contributing to the development of the PLA weapons pointed again at us and our allies. And it's just extraordinary. And they also use our technology to conduct mass surveillance of and control their own population and, way beyond the Uyghurs in that situation. But I think that President Xi must be astonished at our recklessness, that we allow these things. We don't just keep the door open so they can walk in and watch what we're doing and take it back home and apply it the way they do. We actually help fund it. The Department of Defense helps fund it. You might expect it from a different federal agency that didn't have national security concerns, but you'd be wrong. Our own Department of Defense has been funding these things. And so to all the people right now that are upset about how President Trump is rattling a lot of cages, it's time to have Jesus in the temple, so to speak, in a lot of these agencies, and to turn over upend the apple carts and say, what are you people doing? Let's take a look at it before we're all dead. So, I really support what's going on right now. It's terrific.
You also write that it's not just China that we have to worry about using this technology and information against us directly. They're also using this technology to aid other countries that are stirring up hornets' nests around the globe that are involving the United States, either through money or through our military, whatever the case may be. In your piece, you wrote, without China's financial and material backing, Russia's invasion of Ukraine may have faltered long ago. So it's not just whenever the Chinese do something that we can see with our own two eyes, or we can recognize that it's China being aggressive towards us. They're stirring up pots all around the globe.
Absolutely. And, kind of our continuing failure to watch what the Chinese are doing to us and to be careful in what we're doing with them. It's a little like the Europeans right now giving President Trump a hard time over Zelensky in Ukraine. All these tough Europeans and the Prime Minister of Britain and Macron and all these, they're out there saying, we will send our troops to Ukraine. We'll be the tripwire if America won't, and they're hollering at us. At the same time, these same countries are buying Russian gas. So they're literally fueling, putting money in Putin's pocket, even though they say he's the greatest threat ever, and they attack President Trump for not taking the Putin threat seriously. Meanwhile, they're doing that while they're sending their equipment, their supplies, and claiming that they're going to be the tripwire with troops stationed in Ukraine to prevent further Russian aggression. It's mindless, and we're doing the same thing with China. It's really time we stop. And just last night, the Chinese embassy in Washington, and also I think the Chinese foreign ministry, in response to President Trump's announcement that there would be new tariffs on certain Chinese goods, they said they're ready for any kind of war, and not just a tariff war, but any kind of war against the United States, and more or less bring it on. And you'll recall that when Nancy Pelosi went to visit Taiwan 2 or 3 years ago, they actually more or less threatened to incinerate this country, our country, in response, completely overreacting, threatening her safety during the trip, and then subsequent trips with other congressmen. And this is not a country that's looking out for us. This is a totalitarian country that has incredible economic weapons, incredible military weapons, a lot of them acquired through technology transfers from the United States, and that continues to go on, as the December report from Congress showed, with these 2,000 plus scientific collaborations that have military applications. At some point, we're either going to get clobbered by the Chinese or we're going to come to our senses.
Do you think that the power players in Washington recognize what a threat China actually poses to the United States and to global security and global stability?
I think they do, but I also think that they've gotten rich off of our investments in China. And you have so many critical investment funds of the U.S. I mean, State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, that are heavily invested in China. You have, I mean, you can look at different state pension funds, including California, that are invested in Chinese companies, some of which are sanctioned companies, sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department or the State Department, saying these are bad companies. In one case, I think that the California state pension system may be invested. It's a small investment, but in a company that's again on one of these sanctions lists because of its activities suppressing the Uyghurs. So America has made a lot of money. There's been great profiting from the Chinese. It seems like over the last 4 or 5 years, there are some of our bigger firms that are saying, look, China has not become what we had hoped, and they're not becoming more like us, which is always our hope, whether we're going to Iraq or China. We're like, surely they want to become just like us, and then we find out not necessarily. And with China, it's a heck of a risk, and I think that we continue to take the risk. But, I mean, you've got Mitch McConnell. His family has made tens of millions of dollars from China. Look at Joe Biden. 153 million in Chinese donations to UPenn that followed his opening the Biden Center at UPenn in 2018. And there's something like, I think it was 60 million roughly in anonymous donations to UPenn from China that came into UPenn before Joe Biden became president. And that's where Antony Blinken worked. That's where I think there were 12 senior officials in the Biden government worked there. And of course, the president himself was being paid $1 million a year by UPenn. So, I mean, you have a lot of situations where the Chinese have bankrolled very senior. I mean, you don't get more senior than the president of the United States, right? The former president. They bankrolled his activities, and so there's some real ownership when it comes to our leadership class. No one owns Donald Trump, though. That's the thing.
Well, this is an issue that really highlights the separation between Donald Trump and the establishment Republicans, many of whom still exist in Congress. Trump is legitimately tough on China, and they are not. On the Democratic side of the aisle, you don't really see that kind of stratification outside of Nancy Pelosi in an odd turn of events. She was legitimately hard on China, oftentimes one of the only voices in that room in the Democratic side of the aisle who was.
Sure. Yep. Now, she was, I don't know if it's just because she's a relic from a previous age, and I don't mean to sound unkind in saying that because of her age, but I mean, there was a time when you had senior Democrats that actually, they said, hey, we're okay with cooperating with China, but also don't invade Taiwan, things like that. And for some reason, I don't know if it's because of the significant Asian population, a lot of people who fled Red China in San Francisco. I don't know what the cause of it is, but whatever it is, I'm glad that she had the nerve to actually go to Taiwan and stick her middle finger in the air to the CCP. So it's terrific, and we need more who will do it. There's a very small handful. The ranking member of the House Select Committee on the CCP is excellent on these issues, works very well with his Republican counterparts. Mark Warner, senator from Virginia, worked very well with Marco Rubio in the Senate together on these issues. And so we've now got thanks to the election results, we've got a situation where I think if President Trump wants to take on China more directly, he's got support in the House, got support in the Senate, and moving on these things can't happen a minute too soon.
Paul Moore, former Assistant U.S. Attorney and Counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division in the first Trump administration. He has a piece out right now in The Hill, which you can read online at thehill.com. It's titled, "The U.S. Must Protect Vital Information from Enemies Like China." Paul Moore, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, John. Great talking to you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. Like, let's say you want to hear an Ed Lasko Coast crime blotter from last week.
He is back, he is naked, and he's on the attack.
And just when you think we've talked about all of the crime in the state of California, as they say in late-night TV infomercials, but there's more.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, this edition might even make you hungry.
A serial dine and dasher had screwed over a sushi place one time too many, where when they knew he walked in and knew he was going to walk out, they set up a trap. For more on the San Jose sushi place that had enough with the dine and dasher, let's go to KGO.
New at 11, a serial dine and dasher in the South Bay was arrested after a restaurant caught him in the act. The restaurant owner says the man ate up to $1,000 worth of sushi and...
This guy went for the bluefin toro.
Oh, yeah. That is definite Toro ordering.
$1,000 worth of sushi and alcohol without paying. Fed up with the raw deal, the restaurant...
Of course. You know, San Francisco, you can be a much bigger media market than you act sometimes.
Don't act like Albuquerque.
Without paying. Fed up with the raw deal, the...
That's Market 9. Don't act like Market 29.
Without paying. Fed up with the raw deal, the restaurant made a plan. ABC 7 News reporter Zach Fuentes has the moments leading up to the arrest, all caught on camera.
Skipping out on a tab, and it's all caught on camera. Randy Musterer, owner of Sushi Confidential, says this man had done...
Sushi Confidential.
The sushi places are like the faux places. They all have a play on words as part of the name. Unforgettable, Beverly Hills 9021 Faux. You get the idea.
There's one in Encino, Fabulous.
Randy Musterer, owner of Sushi Confidential, says this man had done this at least 3 times between the Campbell and San Jose locations.
It's a minimum of $500 or $600, and it may be up towards $1,000 when we're pulling additional receipts.
Musterer had a pic...
$1,000 of stolen sushi.
Boy, that guy must have eaten half the ocean.
Musterer had a picture of the man for staff to see, along with receipts of the tabs he left behind.
He always orders...
Do not serve salmon to this man.
I love that they have his picture hanging like he bounced a check at a liquor store.
Musterer had a picture of the man for staff to see, along with receipts of the tabs he left behind.
He always orders multiple beers and multiple food items.
Well, everybody orders multiple beers and multiple food items. It's a sushi bar.
Okay, beer is relatively inexpensive. How much must have this guy consumed to get the bill up to over $1,000?
Things changed, though, when he tried to dine and dash for a 4th-time Sunday.
He got the salmon with the caviar on it.
Boy, that's pretty bold. To go to the same place 4 different times and not pay the bill and expect them to serve you and not remember what you look like?
I mean, after the first time, maybe you go back because you get a rush. After the second time, you think they're just never going to do anything about it. But after the third time, these people had enough.
But just assuming that you pay your tab, how many times do you go to a restaurant before you become a regular? I'd say at 4 times, you're a regular.
Things changed, though, when he tried to dine and dash for a 4th-time Sunday in Campbell. Musterer said he got a call from his employees that the man had returned.
He's back.
And they were ready.
Tells you how good the fish is here, that this thief victimizes the same restaurant over and over and over again.
I kind of want to try it now.
To make sure that...
It's in San Jose.
That's pretty far.
To make sure that this was, in fact, the same man, they made a plan.
Drop the check and tell him that, you as the server, you have to close out, so then maybe we can speed up that process.
The server stays there waiting for the man to pay. He instead asks to use the restroom.
Of course he does.
Oh, yeah. He's lactose intolerant.
Acts like he goes into the bathroom, and then immediately he starts to come out the back door. He's greeted by our busser, who prevents him really from going any further.
I think his name was Tiny.
Yeah. That wasn't a teenager who was bussing tables that day.
And then that's when he turned back in.
For safety of staff and customers, Musterer told the workers to avoid any physical interaction with the man, so he bolted back through the restaurant.
Really? I mean, it is a sushi bar. You've got some of the sharpest knives in the entire culinary industry.
You could probably detain him with a couple of chopsticks.
So he bolted back through the restaurant and out the front door. By now, Musterer said he and Campbell...
You know, this guy has cost this sushi place so much money, I wouldn't be even a little upset if they threw some wasabi in his eyes.
Oh, yeah. Or just throw a net over him like you're catching lobster.
So he bolted back through the restaurant and out the front door. By now, Musterer said he and Campbell PD were chasing after the suspect, but couldn't find him and initially gave up until Musterer thought he spotted him again.
And I make a U-turn.
Musterer called PD, who made an arrest, a relief for him and also neighboring businesses.
I'm thrilled that somebody was caught. The more of that, the better. It's a common problem for all of us.
I don't think they serve sushi in prison.
They do not.
Problem for all of us.
We reached out to Campbell PD, who said the suspect lives in Campbell. He was cited and released.
Cited and released?
Well, $1,000 in theft spread over 4 visits. So that's, let's just say, $250 he dings him for each time. Boy, he was ordering a lot. For one person, $250 when all you're drinking is beer?
It's not even going for a fancy bottle of sake.
What are they charging over there?
It is San Jose.
But it's not like that's grand theft. So I guess they would just cite and release you for 4 different crimes of $250 each time.
If I'm the restaurateur, I wanted all that sushi back.
No, you don't.
He was cited and released, expected to appear in court where they say the Santa Clara County DA may combine the dine and dash cases in both Campbell and San Jose for steeper penalties.
Yeah, get this guy for grand sushi theft.
Yeah, you need to get it over a certain dollar amount, and then you got him.
Musterer hopes the arrest serves as a lesson to the suspect and others.
Because it is harming small businesses, it's harming all of our employees, and there's security issues with all of this in general. So, you know, we just hope that no one wants to steal from others.
In Campbell, Zach Fuentes, ABC 7 News.
The moral of the story, pay for your own damn fish.
Just think about being an adult and deciding to do that at a neighborhood restaurant that you frequent all the time. How tacky do you have to be? Not just dumb, but tacky to even consider doing something like that. Idiot. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
This audience is creative, and I appreciate it. And, of course, I should have seen this coming. But, Johnny, when you started mentioning Vietnamese restaurants with silly names, you knew that someone was going to email us names of Vietnamese restaurants we can't say on the air.
I grew up in Garden Grove. I'm very familiar with some of those names.
I know it's low-hanging fruit, but you can have a lot of fun when the first word of your restaurant is pho.
I can't even tell you the name of the place I used to get my coffee in Garden Grove.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And the name is right on the marquee and on every single cup they sell. And if you're in Garden Grove and you're walking around with a cup from that particular establishment, no one bats an eye. The moment you cross over into Anaheim or Santa Ana or anywhere else, you start getting looked at funny. They think you're a little bit crude. I just say I'm enjoying the coffee. Good morning.